Greetings once again to all my dedicated followers, especially those following this topic, the research process. I'm sure you won't be disappointed for choosing to follow up, and for that reason, we are again back in this video to look at the 8th subtopic under this topic, the research process, according to our topic outline uh, as we looked at it in the first video on this. So I'd like to thank you first of all for your continued following up, and I'm sure that you are realizing your aim or achieving your aim for following this topic. In case of any concerns, you can put it in the comment section and I'll be looking at it. Now in this video we are going to look at a step-by-step guide to data collection, and the aim is to guide you throughout the data collection process. Therefore, to achieve this, we are going to look at the 4 steps in the data collection process, which is first of all, defining the aim of your research. Second, choosing your data collection method. Third, planning your data collection procedures, and finally collecting the data. So we're going to look at each of them in details, and we shall see. So to start, data collection is a systematic process of gathering observations or measurements. Whether you are performing research for business, government, or academic purposes, the data collection allows you to gain first-hand knowledge and original insights into your research problem. And while methods and aims may differ between fields, the overall process of data collection remains largely the same. So before you begin collecting data, you need to consider the following: the aim of your research, the type of data that you will collect, the method and procedures you will use to collect, store, and process the data. And to collect high quality data that is relevant to your purpose or purposes, you need to follow these 4 steps as we are going to look at them. First step, that is defining the aim of your research, the very first step in or procedure in data collection. So before you start the process of data collection, you need to identify exactly what you want to achieve. So you can start by writing a problem statement, like what is the practical or scientific issue that you want to address and why does it matter. And after that, next you formulate 1 or more research questions that precisely define what you want to find out. Depending on your research questions, you might need to collect quantitative or qualitative data. We know those types of data. We looked at them, we've been looking at them and interacting with them. So it will all depend on your research question, which data you collect. So quantitative data is expressed in numbers and graphs and is analyzed using through statistical methods, while qualitative data is expressed in words and analyzed through interpretations and categorizations, just as we observed when we are looking at the different types of data analysis, which include informatics analysis and content analysis. So if your aim is to test a hypothesis, measure something precisely, or gain large-scale statistical insights, then you will collect quantitative data. So, and if your aim is to explore ideas, understand experiences, or gain detailed insights into a specific context, then you will collect quantitative data. So depending on what your question is about and what your aim is, you determine what kind of data you will need to collect. But those are the different groupings that you can consider for each data type. And if you have several aims, then that is, if your aims are some are qualitative and others are quantitative, then you can use a mixed methods approach that collects both types of data. So we are going to have an example of both of quantitative and qualitative research aims. Like we are going to take a research question for this video illustration purposes. Let's say we want to research employee perception of their direct managers in a large organization. So for such a research problem, we can have two aims. First, the aim to assess whether there are significant differences in perceptions of managers across different departments and office locations. And then the second aim is to gather meaningful feedback from employees to explore new ideas for how managers can improve. So remember, your research should aim at solving something if possible. So if we are aiming at getting the perception of employees, perception of employees of their direct managers, then having got that perception, how can it be improved? So that's why you have two aims. One, assessing whether there are significant differences in perception of managers across different departments and office locations. And I beg your pardon, you first assessing whether there are significant differences in perception of managers across different departments and office locations, and then secondly, gathering meaningful feedback from employees to explore new ideas or how managers can improve. So since our questions, our aims, the first one is quantitative. When you look at perception, we shall see how we shall measure it, and we will come to learn that it is actually quantitative. Then the second one is qualitative. So because we have both data types, then we shall need to use a mixed methods approach to collect both quantitative and qualitative data. So now that is all about the first step. Having defined your aim, and then you choose your data collection method, because in order for you to define the aim for your research, you must have the research problem and then the research question. So now from that you determine which type of data you will collect. So depending on the type of data you will collect, then you go to the second step, which is choosing your data collection method, because different data types have different collection methods. So now that is the second step, choosing your data collection method. So based on the data you want to collect, decide which method is best suited for your research. So experimental research is primarily a quantitative method of data collection. Interviews or focus groups and ethnography are qualitative methods. In future time we shall look at what ethnography is, but in just I'm going to talk about it. We are going to come across it and I will explain it. And then we have surveys, observations, and archive. We have surveys, observations, archival research, and secondary data. Those are the collection methods that can be both quantitative and qualitative. And then the other thing is that you need to carefully consider what method you will use to gather the data that helps you directly answer your research question. So let us look at the data collection methods. So among the data collection methods, we have experiment. So in this section, we're going to look at the data collection method, when to use it and how to use it, such that you can know, like you can tell if I have such a question and if I aim to study this, then which a collection method is best for this. So that is what is the aim of this section. So we have experiment data collection. There is experiment. So when we use this when you want to test causal relationships, because experiments test effect and cause relationships. Then how do we collect data? By manipulating variables and measure their effect on others. Like for example, if I make reference to our secondary level, whereby we are doing experiments. So from that experience, you see that we are working with variables, varying one and then getting its effect on the other, something like that. Then we have survey. So when do we use survey? We use surveys when we want to understand the general characteristics, opinions of a group of people. So how do we collect data using surveys? It's just a matter of distributing a list of questions to a sample online or in person or over the phone. And then the other collection method is interviews or focus groups. So we use this data when we want to gain an in-depth understanding of perceptions or opinions of a topic. And how do we collect data using this method? By verbally asking participants open-ended questions in individual interviews or focus group discussions. So open-ended questions are aimed at getting someone's view. And then there is observation. So we use observation when we want to understand something in its natural setting. And how do we collect data using observation? Just by just measuring or surveying a sample without trying to affect them. That is, you measure and survey sample without trying to affect them. Then the other one is a phenography. So a phenography is just used when we want to study the culture of a community or organization firsthand. How do we collect data here? We join and participate in a community and record your observations and reflections. So remember, we use this when you want to study culture. So you can't study culture by picking out a number of people or by using sampling. It can't work. So what we do here, we use ethnography. So ethnography is where you as the researcher, you join those people that you want to make the research about. If it is an organization, you want to study their culture, you go and work in that organization, and then as you observe, you make notes, you get something like that, but you go and stay with them for a given period of time. That is enough for research. So only one disadvantage with ethnography is that it needs some time. Yeah, if you have a very short data collection time frame, then ethnography would not be the best data collection method. Then we have archival research. So when we use archival research, we use it when we want to understand the current or historical events, conditions, or practices. So how do we collect data using this method? By us accessing manuscripts, documents, or records from libraries, depositories, or the internet. Then the other thing is secondary data collection. So we use secondary data collection when we want to analyze data from populations that we can't access firsthand. Secondary data is data that already exists, was got by other people, collected, and then you're just using it. It is not firsthand. So how do we collect using this data type? By finding existing data sets that have already been collected from sources such as government agencies or research organizations. So that's all. So that is to do with the second procedure. Like having finished defining your research, the aim of your research, then you choose the data collection method depending on the type of data that you want to collect. And then after determining the method of data collection, then you plan your collection procedures. That is the third step. Like you've finished selecting the method of data collection, then you see how will I do the actual collection. So that is planning your data collection procedures. So when you know which methods you are using to collect data, you need to plan exactly how will you implement them. What procedures will you follow to make accurate observations or measurements of the variables you are interested in? So for instance, if you are conducting surveys or interviews, decide what form the questions will take. Like when we talk of form of a question, are they open-ended questions or closed-ended questions? And if you're conducting an experiment, make decisions about your experimental design. So when it comes to planning your data collection procedures, you need to consider the following four factors. One, operationalization, sampling, standardization of procedures, and then creating a data management plan. So let's look at them in details and see. So first of all, starting with operationalization. So sometimes your variables can be measured directly. There are variables that are measurable, like age. You can measure, it is a figure. How many years are you? How old are you? I'm 18 years. Period. It is measurable. But now, when it comes like often you'll be interested in collecting data on more abstract concepts or variables that can't be directly observed. Things like satisfaction, perception, you can't measure perception, you can't measure satisfaction. Instead, you have to operationalize it. So operationalization simply means turning an abstract conceptual idea into a measurable observation. So that is, when planning how you collect data, you need to translate the conceptual definition of what you want to study into the operational definition of what you will actually measure. For example, when it comes to things like satisfaction, I'm sure as you've been using your smartphone, you've come across cases whereby you've been asked to rate an app. So you use a 5-star scaling, you rate an app, and in certain cases you've been asked to give your satisfaction with a particular app or with a particular service using a 5-star rating, whereby sometimes you find that 1 star represents very dissatisfied, then 2nd star dissatisfied, then 3rd star neither dissatisfied, neither satisfied, then the 4th star satisfied, 5th star very satisfied. So that's how you can measure such concepts, by using a 5-star rating scale. So that was just for illustration to help you understand and familiarize yourself with this term of operationalization. So let's look at an example. So let's say, depending on our research question, the research problem, let's say we've decided to have to use surveys to collect quantitative data. So the concept that we want to measure is the leadership of managers. We want to measure the leadership of managers, but it can't be measured exactly, so you have to operationalize it. So we can operationalize this concept in 2 ways. First, by asking managers to rate their own leadership skills on a 5-point scale, assessing their ability to delegate, decisiveness, and dependability. Like I've given an illustration of satisfaction, so it is the same thing we do. We ask managers to rate their reading leadership skills on a 5-point scale. So under this, we test for 3 concepts: ability to delegate, decisiveness, and dependability. So each of them is rated on a 5-star scale. So we tell the managers to do that. And then secondly, we do the same and we tell their employees to provide anonymous feedback on the managers regarding the same topics. So by doing so, we are just trying to get multiple ratings of a single concept that can help us cross-check our data and assess the test validity of our measures. So that is that. Then sampling, which is the second one, you may need to develop a sampling plan to obtain data systematically. So this involves defining the population you will use, then the group that which is the group you want to draw conclusions about, then the sample, which is the group you actually collect data from. We looked about this one in under sampling. When you in a certain video, you can refer to it. Then when you sample, your sampling method will determine how you recruit participants or obtain measurements for your study. And then to decide the sampling method, you will need to consider factors like required sample size, accessibility of the sample, and time frame of the data collection is very important. So such factors will help you determine the sampling method. Then the other point is standardization of procedures, standardizing procedures. Sometimes if multiple researchers are involved in a research, we write a detailed manual to standardize data collection procedure in our study. So this means laying out specific step-by-step instructions so that everyone in our research or your research team collects data in a consistent way. For example, by conducting experiments under the same conditions and using objective criteria to record and categorize observations. So like, let me use an illustration of our previous secondary school experience. Like, as we are doing experiments in those days, we used to do, like, let's take an example of the chemistry experiments, whereby you are doing experiments, volumetric analysis, but then the teacher has a range for which they are to mark your results. So remember that despite the inaccuracies of different people, because some people are just reluctant, others are not accurate, but because the teachers provide standard conditions for the experiment, you find that if you're serious, you come up with results that are within the range of the examiner, something like that. So in that, but that is what we call standardizing. They standardize the conditions for all the students, that even if you're many, you will still come up with the same, like with answers in that very range. So that is what it means when you say standardizing. So meaning you state step-by-step instructions such that all people participating in the research will follow in order to come up with a reliable or good accurate results for the research. Just as our teachers used to do, they give instructions to follow for that experiment. The steps: after this, add this; after hydrochloric acid, add sodium peroxide, things like that, in that you follow the same procedures. So something like that. Then, so having finished standardizing the procedures, then you create a data plan management. So before beginning data collection, you should also decide how will you organize and store your data. So if you're collecting data from people, you will likely need to anonymize and safeguard the data to prevent links of sensitive information like names or identity numbers. Then secondly, if you're collecting data via interviews or pencil and paper formats, you will need to perform transcriptions or data entry in systematic ways to minimize distortion. And then thirdly, you can prevent loss of data by having an organization system that is routinely backed up. Then finally, we go to the final step under data collection, and that is collecting the data. So having defined your aim of your research, chosen the data collection method, and then standardized plan your data collection procedures through those steps we've looked at, then you go to the final step, which is collecting the data. So finally, under this step you can implement chosen methods to measure or observe the variables you are interested in. So we are going to look at an example of collecting qualitative and quantitative data in relation to our research problem that we chose at the beginning. So this is just to help you get an idea and image of how the process can be like and how you can do it. So our example goes like this. Let's say we want to collect data about perception of managers. So in this case, we shall administer a survey with closed and open-ended questions to a sample of 300 company employees across different departments and locations. So closed-ended questions and open-ended questions both serve different purposes. So the closed-ended questions ask participants to rate their managers' leadership skills on a scale from 1 to 5, like we looked at it and how it operates. So the data produced is numerical and can be statistically analyzed for average and patterns. So that is the first thing. We give out survey that have closed-ended questions which have a 5 rating scale, 1 to 5 rating scale, that can be used to rate the manager's leadership skills by the participants. And then so the data we get in that case is numerical, so we analyze it using statistical methods. So then secondly, the open-ended questions ask participants, for example, of what the manager is doing well now and what they can do better in the future. So meaning this one is, and remember in our problem, we wanted to get their perception, and then after see how managers can improve. So that's the aim of the open-ended questions, to ask participants what the managers are doing now and what they can do in the future. So this is to hope get the views of the participants of how the managers can improve. So the data produced is qualitative. Under this second option of open-ended question, is qualitative and can be categorized through content analysis for further insights. So to ensure that high quality data is recorded in a systematic way. Here there's some, you are going to look at some best practices that you can use. So first of all, you need to record all relevant information as and when you obtain the data. Like you don't wait. For example, note down whether or how. For example, noting down whether or how lab equipment is calibrated during an experiment study. Then double check manual data entry for errors. You double check manual data entry for errors. And then thirdly, if you collect quantitative data, you can assess the reliability and validity to get an indication of your data quality. So you may ask yourself what validity and reliability are, but what you need to know is reliability and validity are both about how well a method measures something. So they aim at determining how well a method measures something. So reliability simply refers to consistency of a measure, that is whether the results can be reproduced under the same conditions. An example I can give here is that time when we are doing electricity experiments. After, let's say, you're doing voltage and current, so you're given a voltage value for which you're supposed to find the value of current. So always we used to do that, like after getting a first value of current for a given value of voltage, then you repeat the same procedure to see if you get the same value of current like you got before. But unfortunately it was impossible because for electricity experiments you're using batteries, and when it works, its power goes on reducing, so you could not get the same results because the condition has changed, because the power has reduced. But that was intended to get reliability. You get, like, can it reproduce the same result under the same condition? So that was just hope you understand there. I just wanted to use that illustration because it brings it out. Though though we still couldn't get the same result, just because of the reason I've explained. The batteries were drained already. It is being drained, so it can't produce the same result. So then the other thing is validity. So validity refers to the accuracy of a measure, just accuracy, whether the results really do represent what they are supposed to measure. So that's all about those two things. They're just intended um, to show how well a method measures something. So if you're doing experimental research, you also have to consider the internal and external validity of your experiment. So just let's try to summarize what we've covered, but I'm sure by now you can actually come have your data collection procedure very well and very easy if you follow these steps that I've given you. So first, what you have to do is to define the aim of your research, which is either qualitative or quantitative depending on your research problem and research questions. So having defined your the aim of your research, then you determine or you choose your data collection method that is suitable for your aim. Having known that it is either qualitative or quantitative, you choose a method that is suitable for it. So having chosen a method, then you go on to planning your data collection procedures using the four factors we looked at under planning data collection procedures, which include standardization, operationalization, data management plan, and then sampling. And then having done that, then the final step is collecting the data, implementing what you've uh, worked on previously. So that's all for this video. Thank you for watching. If it has been of use, you can like and subscribe for more content and to support our channel. Thank you. Be blessed.